Hello everyone, welcome to another opinion piece by me, and this is a rather controversial one. It is something that I've been planning to do for a long while but haven't really found the time for. So basically, a little bit of a background story. In January, Neil Drunkman has unveiled his new generic bald Asian woman galactic game thing, and the internet was set ablaze. And while the internet was busy discussing the supposed next flop could be or could not be next flop from Naughty Dog, discussions were also being made about how Neil ruined The Last of Us by killing Joel, during which I saw plenty of commentators claim that Joel had it coming and that he was an evil person who robbed the world of a vaccine. This stupid notion, promoted by The Last of Us, is just that, stupid, as it relies on people's misconceptions and misinformation regarding medicine, vaccines, and treatment, how they are made and distributed, and so on, making people believe that Abby's father, for simplicity's sake we'll just call him Dr. Nothing from now on, was somehow a kind of a neo-Jesus, a benevolent being trying to cure the world, killed on the verge of achieving that goal by that evil Joel. As for me, being a certified nurse who actually was on the front lines of COVID, so to speak, reading research papers about each and every new treatment that showed promise, I gained a bit of an insider's insight into the matter, so to speak, which is why I came up with 3 points as to why, at least in a realistic situation, the supposed plan the game proposes to get a cure is pure nonsense. One is medical, second is logistical, and the third is political. Let's start with point 1, which is the medical. Point 1. You don't kill your immune patients under any circumstances. Regardless of what has been said in the show, cordyceps has been proven to be both an airborne but also bloodborne pathogen. For instance, people who weren't exposed to the airborne pathogen, which are the spores, but were bitten by an infected individual or otherwise came into contact with infected blood, became infected themselves. This suggests that, like every disease, cordyceps, despite being a fungal pathogen, enters the body through the blood, which is likely triggers the immune system that is in time overwhelmed, resulting in the final form of infection, a new zombie. However, because cordyceps seems to go through the blood, then maybe that's where it can also be stopped through a vaccine or some kind of treatment that would likely act like antibodies or antibiotics that will help the immune system overcome the infection. To create a vaccine, one must first obtain the pathogen, then grow it in a lab in a form where it can't create the disease anymore, using this form of either dead pathogen or weakened pathogen, and then injecting it into the bloodstream of an individual, which forces the body to create antibodies, effectively making that person either immune or extremely unlikely to die from the disease, as his immune system is now trained to fight a real infection. Other ways to fight diseases can also be in the form from Ellie's blood. For instance, in the movie I Am Legend, Will Smith's character is trying to find a treatment or a cure that could save and possibly reverse the effects of a zombie infection on the living individual by transferring his immunity to others. This is not entirely unfounded, as it may seem. Some of the first types of treatments we had to give to COVID patients is plasma taken from those that have been cured of COVID. And despite not being 100% effective, this treatment alone helped reduce ICU admissions by almost 50%, which is at least something that we can use to try and treat the disease. So by killing Ellie, you're basically killing the only person you can extract plasma with, the pathogen, thus preventing you from ever obtaining enough to form a vaccine. Also, by killing Ellie, you're denying yourself an immune person you can take plasma form as a sort of early treatment for the disease. You're basically taking away your one chance of ridding the world of cordyceps. Another angle many people fail to consider is the notion of what if Dr. Nothing is wrong. One of the major hallmarks of medicine is that it tries to be as predictable as science, but it can never be. Unlike science that talks facts, medicine talks percentages. Percentage that a certain treatment will work, percentage that a chance of surviving a procedure. People can die undergoing a routine procedure that many hundreds of thousands of people went through before and lived. Someone can take a drug that is considered safe for off-the-shelf usage, meaning no need for prescription, and develop a life-ending reaction to it, and so forth. While horrible and extremely unlikely, it is an unpleasant truth that the world of medicine has to live and contend with. Dr. Nothing says so himself that it might work, which implies that it might also not work, and Marlene admits that it's just an hypothesis, and there is no guarantee that it would work. That's not how medicine works. In the world of medicine, no one will tell you that something is 100% guarantee for fear of being sued. So what if the hypothesis is proven wrong, and now the only person immune to cordyceps has died for nothing? This is another reason why it's just too risky to be realistic. Dr. Nothing can gain so much more from Ellie's blood just being alive rather than being dead, which is why killing Ellie for a cure, which Marlene basically admits is not even a treatment. They're just here to try and make people become invisible to the disease and thus prevent people from being bitten. All of this is just pure stupid. Point 2. Production, transportation, and distribution. So let's say Abby's father managed to produce a single sample of the supposed cure, which again, according to the show, is not really a cure, but more like making people become carriers to cordyceps, but without it triggering their bodies. Again, this sounds all kind of risky, as you can't really tell how people will react to such a treatment, as some might actually turn into carriers like they wanted, but others might turn into actual zombies. But let's put all this aside and say he has the cure. Now what? For comparison, Pfizer, one of the world's biggest pharmaceutical companies, used dozens of laboratories manned by hundreds of scientists and using the logistical and transportation capabilities of an entire planet in order to create and distribute the vaccine for COVID. Now we can discuss the effectiveness of said vaccine as much as you please, but the fact remains that even with all these resources, it took Pfizer about a year and a half to start producing the vaccine en masse and another 6 months to distribute it worldwide. Now the question remains, what are the production, logistical, and distribution capabilities of the fireflies? And I'm going to answer it by basically saying none in all regards. The amount of plot armor Dr. Nothing needs to have in order to cure the world with his feeble, non-existing capabilities for drug production and distribution is bordering Gandalf-level Lord of the Rings magic, and even then it might not be enough. In order for him to cure the world, he will first need to find new laboratories stocked with the right equipment for manufacturing the vaccine, which will have to be manned by people with experience in laboratory work to produce the vaccine by the hundreds of doses daily. Where is he going to find all of this? And keep in mind, this is not even taking into account the amount of power output alone necessary for such endeavors, as well as food and water requirements to keep the staff working. It's just too much for a group that survives solely by scavenging the wasteland and produces nothing by themselves. Next, he will need to find a magical truck depot full of electric-powered vehicles who could distribute said doses. And I do mean electric because I believe that after 20 years of the apocalypse, gasoline might be a tiny bit scarce. With basically no oil production going on in any of the known factions, his best chance to accomplish this would be to find a hidden Tesla bunker that Elon Musk keeps somewhere in the United States. And I don't know, man, I feel like his chances of finding it, if it even exists, are kinda slim. The trucks need to be in mint mechanical condition with fresh new batteries and are either solar charge capable or have charging stations spread out along their routes in order to make the days-long journeys necessary for distribution from coast to coast. Also, let's not forget that the US highway system is almost completely destroyed from fatigue and lack of maintenance after 20 years, so he's going to have to find a way to fix the US highway system while he's at it. And this is only for USA, for the continental USA, sorry. I'm not even talking about Canada or Mexico or even, God forbid, somewhere overseas like Europe. So this is my second point as to why Dr. Nothing wouldn't be able to save the world as Drunkman suggested. It's just way over his head. And now for the last point, which absolutely nobody on the internet contemplated. Point 3. The politics and factional wars prevent humanity from ever curing the world. Let's start this one with a theoretical question, okay? Let's say that Russia has developed tomorrow a cure for cancer. Russia, a country who has embroiled in a conflict with Ukraine for the last 3 years, which is supported by Western countries both with funds and weapons. Russia, who views the entirety of the Western world as hostile, where every country with a democratic style of government is basically considered an existential threat to their rule. And then all of a sudden, magically in a lab somewhere in the Kamchatka Peninsula, there's breaking news that a new treatment had been used on more than 5,000 patients of cancer over the last decade. Report that 96% of all cases of cancer have vanished completely, and 89% of all cases cured did not experience a cancer relapse. Relapse being that the cancer comes back. Will Russia share this new treatment with the world for free? Will Russia just hand it over to the Americans? Will they share this new treatment with the countries of Western Europe who are actively arming Ukraine? The same question applies here. The only difference is the factions involved. The fact is, Dr. Nothing, if he had all the capabilities necessary for curing the world in terms of actually having a cure, and having all the production, logistics and distribution capabilities he needs, he still wouldn't hand it over to Fedra, and he still wouldn't hand it over to the Scars. And why should he? If he has the cure, he can literally fortify a place and sit tight as the other factions eventually crumble under the pressure of constant infections and outbreaks. Which is why there is absolutely no incentive for him to share the cure with the other known factions, and even much less so with unknown factions or even factions overseas. So that is the third and final reason why I think he wouldn't have used the cure to fix the world, even if he was capable of it. Alright, so now that we're done with our points, I want to just conclude this video. So, Dr. Nothing's dream of curing the world is but a ruse. He can't achieve it with his current means, and he won't achieve it even if he had more. In fact, he is supposed to be the main villain, in my opinion, for fooling so many people into thinking it was possible to pull off such a cure with so little means. The reason why The Last of Us 1 was so impactful is twofold. It created, one, scenes that conveyed pure emotions to the player, like the death of Sarah, that the player just can't stay idle to. Like, she was an NPC, sure, a fictional character, and yet her death was so tragic, I actually wept. Number two is that the game dared to ask the player a moral question, which is something not many games do. One that lingers in the minds of many long after the game ended. Will you sacrifice your child to rid the world of cancer? Imagine if a doctor comes to you and he tells you, I can cure cancer. No one else in the world will ever suffer from cancer diseases. But to do this, your child must die. Will you do it? Can you do it? How can you even cope with such a question? Moral questions don't have simple, clean-cut answers, and different answers come from different perspectives. In fact, answering such moral questions in the medical world required the establishment of moral ethic committees, to debate on the course of action and what should be taken in certain situations, as in the medical world, more often than not, these questions can literally mean life or death for many people. That is why I think many younger, more idealistic players that didn't have children at the time sided with Marlene's argument more and didn't find it too hard giving up on Ellie, while older players and possibly parents sided more with Joel. But the vilification The Last of Us 2 did to Joel as a half-ass excuse to justify the death is just so stupid. It doesn't ask questions, it just points fingers like a rage-filled Greta-loving millennial, one who will never take responsibility and always looks for the patsy to blame whenever something goes wrong. And I believe this is entirely intentional by Neil and his writers to clear the stage for a new set of stupid, half-assed characters nobody likes or give two F's about, but ones that can still convey the message. Anyway, sorry for the rant, especially in the end. This video took a bit too long than what I wanted originally. Tell me if you what you think about this subject in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Give me more actual suggestions for future videos if you'd like, and hopefully I will see you in future videos.